Greetings, gentle viewer. Today, let's take a look at For Honor, specifically the campaigns. I'd like to preface this analysis by stating that For Honor was marketed as a semi-realistic game, but like everything Ubisoft does, they've muddled it up as time has gone on. As such, I will be evaluating this based on its realism and its writing quality. So before anyone brings up Draconite, or whatever magic Ubisoft has or will concoct, that won't be factored into this assessment. I'll be taking a look at what we were presented and the context that it was released in. The story begins from the perspective of the Warden, who is defending a small fort from the attacking Blackstone Legion. The first problem with this is that we have almost no information on who or what the Warden is. Wardens seem to be an order that holds themselves to honorable behavior and are known for their skill, but how did this Warden come to serve Daubeny? Speaking of which, who is Daubeny? Apparently he angered Apollyon, who leads the Blackstones, but what did he do? Why did he do whatever he did? This unfortunately sets a precedent that will continue throughout the three campaigns, of us having no answers. Speaking of the Warden, he or she is supposed to be of an order of Wardens, who are few in number, but due to game limitations, several characters all share the armor and moveset of the Warden, such as Daubeny, and several of the Blackstone enemies that the player will encounter in this very level. Are they Wardens too? Or was Ubisoft just lazy?
My disappointment is immeasurable. My day is ruined.
As the siege begins, Holden Cross calls out for Daubeny to surrender, but Daubeny doesn't reply. Also put your helm on, Cross, one lucky arrow would end you. This prompts Cross to press the assault. We then get to see the Warden for the first time, and he proceeds to help defend the walls. Unfortunately, we see catapults causing stone walls to explode violently for some reason, and archers refer to loosing arrows or catapult projectiles as firing. This is irksome because that term wasn't used until early firearms were invented, so it makes no sense for a pre-firearm setting to use the term. Is this nitpicking? I'd say no because it makes no sense, but others are more lenient than I. The game proceeds to give the player a few tutorial segments, and it becomes quite apparent how the combat system has changed since the game launched. For those not aware, the multiplayer of the game has received numerous tweaks and changes, but the campaign runs on the engine that the game had at launch, meaning that certain characters' movesets and mechanics can be entirely different. Oddly, Daubeny's forces all sport the same color heraldry. The knights seem to be based upon real-world knight orders, such as the Knights Hospitallers, so the Blackstone Legion makes some degree of sense in that regard. Daubeny's troops do not. Are they all mercenaries or defectors? I get that this was probably done for game reasons, letting the player know at a glance whose side each unit is on, but why aren't they wearing their personal colors, as independent knights did? Once again, there are no answers. After defending the gate from attackers who have somehow made it inside, the Warden moves up to the walls to attack a group of archers. On the way, he encounters an enemy that in terms of game mechanics is also a Warden, but no attention is given to it. We also see Daubeny, who has somehow migrated from the tower he was hiding on top of to the wall on the other side of the fort, with no visible means of reaching it from where he was. Daubeny's armor appears to be either made of bronze or have a coating of bronze on top of another metal. Why he would do this is strange, as iron and steel are vastly more effective than bronze, but I suppose that was a design choice to make him more visually distinct. He doesn't say anything to the Warden, however, which is strange, as you'd think having a member of such a highly skilled and prestigious order would warrant some form of reaction. The Warden finally reaches the archers and kills them via releasing the mechanism on an overturned catapult. How this catapult magically flopped on its side, I can't even begin to speculate. This seems to be just the rule of cool sort of thing. Maybe it fell off the tower on the right side of the fort, but there's no way to tell for certain. The archers also have flaming arrows. There's been debate as to whether flaming arrows actually existed, but I'm inclined to believe that they didn't, as the sudden acceleration of the arrow would snuff out its fire, and even if it didn't, someone wouldn't just stand there and burn to death. Then, something monumentally nonsensical happens. A rock literally falls from the sky and blasts a massive hole into one of the fort's towers. This rock literally just drops from the sky, smashes through the outer wall of the tower, and then the inner wall just falls to pieces for no reason. The boulder doesn't exit out of the back, the wall just falls apart inexplicably.
More rubble, less trouble!
This lets the attacking Blackstones inside, and the Warden makes his way down to fight them, all while Dalbany screams in terror for his men to defend him.
No!
The Warden also faces another opponent who has the same moveset as a Warden, which is, once again, bizarre. After an arbitrary number of grunts have been killed, the Blackstone forces break through the gate with their battering ram, which for some reason has gears on it. I haven't found any reference to historical battering rams being operated in such a way, but perhaps this was just an artistic liberty, or implying that the knights have made a more advanced ram. Also, why does it have spikes on it? It's just a waste of metal. Cross slowly walks through the destroyed gates, alone, and kills several of Dalbany's grunts. Due to a tragic continuity error, their bodies disappear the attosecond they're out of shot, as they are absent in the next sequence. Holden demands that Dalbany faces him in a trial by combat, so that more soldiers on both sides don't have to die. That's something that's actually admirable about the man, as he serves someone who's so obviously evil, but we'll get to that in due course. Also, how can you see out of that helm cross? It only has breaths in it. Where are the eye holes? Dalbany, being the coward he is, claims that fighting Cross would be an execution, not a trial. A+ for your heroism, dude. What a stunning example of courage. He apparently also holds the title of Warlord, something that confounds me. Not only is it redundant with the Viking class called Warlord, but how did a sniveling coward get that title? Instead of just attacking Dalbany on the spot, Cross allows him to put forward his second, and Dalbany addresses the Warden as though he only now sees him for the first time, and puts him into duel as his second. Now the Warden has to fight an enemy by the name of Adamar. This time, the Warden announces in his inner monologue that this enemy is also a Warden, or once was one. I will point out that there is a nice touch of showing their different body languages as they prepare to fight, with the Warden displaying a respectful gesture, while Adamar has a much cockier and more condescending motion. The Warden voices how he needed to win so that his fellow troops will be spared, and that is one of the few character traits we get for the Warden. He cares about justice and doing what's right. Ultimately, the Warden comes out victorious, and Cross proceeds to knight him into the Blackstone Legion. Why he accepts this, I can't guess. Maybe he thought Cross would kill everyone there if he refused, but that was never stated. He is also given Dalbany's sword, while Cross throws his away. Why? That's your sword, go get it! Also, quit sticking your sword in the ground, it isn't good for the blade. The next mission doesn't improve things. The opening narration alone is contradictory. The Warden states,
"There are many legions. The Iron Legion is the greatest among them. But in Ashfeld, the Iron Legion was about to be routed."
So this fortress is held by the Iron Legion and is about to fall to the Vikings, and the Blackstone Legion sends one person as reinforcements. This is completely illogical plot armor nonsense. One soldier, no matter how skilled, isn't going to turn a siege around. Stone then proceeds to open the gate for some reason. Are you going to lead a sortie? You just said you didn't have the manpower.
Blackstone! Where are our reinforcements?
I'm it.
Is this a joke?
Also, Stone, get that disgusting skull off your helm. It looks like it's going to give you a disease or 3. Finally, we get to kill some Vikings. This level is largely a rehash of the first, serving as more tutorial for mechanics that the player has already performed, but I'd like to know how the Vikings are winning against the Knights. Their grunts have literally no armor other than a shield and a helm, while the Knight grunts have a mix of a few pieces of plate and what looks to be a pseudo-coat of plates on top of chainmail. They would crush the Vikings, no contest. The gameplay of this level contradicts the opening narration, however, as the Warden can freely move about to secure 3 points alone. The narration made it seem as though the Vikings had a massive horde bearing down on this place, but that isn't demonstrated here. I will say that the old animations that the characters had for killing minions was a nice touch, but they were far too slow and inefficient on certain characters, so I can see why they were removed. After killing a few berserkers, the Warden regroups with Stone and his forces to drive the Vikings back. Oddly, there's even an unnamed lawbringer in the midst of the Iron Legion soldiers, and this does provide a small amount of world building, indicating that their members can be part of various legions. The level concludes when a similarly unnamed Valkyrie decides to duel the Warden amidst the fighting, and I have to question if the Warden and the others can speak the Viking language. I believe they speak Icelandic, but correct me if I'm wrong. No context is given as to who the Valkyrie is, or why she wants to fight the Warden exclusively, but she serves as the final boss of the level. The ending cutscene depicts Stone killing a Viking grunt, savoring the experience. The Viking makes no attempt to defend himself, so I guess he's not getting into Valhalla. Stone then congratulates the Warden, and the two clasp hands in camaraderie. We see that Stone can be sadistic towards his enemies, as he took the time to step on the Viking's hand and cause him pain and fear before killing him, and he wears a rancid-looking skull on his helm. He either has a bit of ego or a touch of levity, as he claims that he could have turned the battle around by himself. It isn't much, but at least we got some character traits for him, which is more than what some others received.
Not bad, Blackstone. Not bad at all. Pretty sure I could have done it by myself, but...
I understand that this part of the campaign exists largely for tutorial purposes, but what is being told and what we experience are drastically different things. One man can't turn a siege around so effortlessly, and where are the numbers that the Vikings supposedly had? The narration and gameplay are at odds here.
No one knows if it's fake or it's real. Which one is it? No one has any idea anymore. It's imperceptible.
But we're just getting started. The next level begins after an unknown amount of time compared to the previous level, but the Warden's narration establishes that he has doubts about his new legion.
I had questions about the Blackstone Legion.
Fair enough, considering you just joined up because reasons, I guess. We see several Night Soldiers have been hung from tree limbs, and whether this was done by the Iron Legion deserters we encounter later, or the Vikings, is unclear, but their heraldry is absent, leaving them as washed-out gray props. How they were hung so high off the ground, I'll never be able to fathom though. If they were executed via hanging, then how were they put up there, and what kind of platform was used to do so, and where is it? For some senseless and unknown reason, Cross lets the Warden go on ahead alone to take the Viking outpost that the Iron Legion has deserted, for again, unknown reasons. There sure is a ton of stuff that is never explained at any point in these campaigns, isn't there? The Warden isn't completely alone though, as Stone is a short distance ahead, concealed behind a rock. He seems to have joined the Blackstone Legion now, as his heraldry is now their black and yellowy orange instead of his previous yellow and green of the Iron Legion. How he got ahead of the rest of the Blackstone forces while simultaneously being unseen by the Vikings is anyone's guess though. The Warden states that he can trust Stone more than any of the others because Stone is also a new addition to the Blackstones, continuing on their friendship. As they move forward, they see that the Vikings have disposed of the Iron Legion soldiers stationed at the outpost, and the dialogue here is quite poorly written. The Warden frustratedly declares that the Knights have abandoned their people and wants to know what has happened to the Iron Legion.
What has happened to the Iron Legion?
You'd think that Stone might have some kind of inkling as to what is going on, as he was high enough of a rank to be in command of the fortress in the previous level, but he just stares blankly at the Warden. The Warden and Stone separate, with the Warden moving forward through the gate while Stone fights a raider on the wall. One Viking exclaims, "This is our land." No, it isn't, you fool, you're an invader. After the Warden kills the warlord in charge of the outpost, Stone will finally finish off the raider and open the gate, allowing the pair to move on. This is where the ludicrousness gets cranked up to 11. A lone peacekeeper of the Iron Legion rushes the two, screaming, "Die, Blackstone dogs!"
Die, Blackstone dogs!
Why? It's 2 against 1, you imbecile. She's cut down without having any further dialogue, and thus we get no understanding as to why these particular members of the Iron Legion have become deserters, or what they hope to accomplish. A short distance down the path, the Warden and Stone are then assailed by a group of Iron Legion soldiers comprised of 2 grunts, 2 captains, and 2 wardens. Are these guys also wardens, or are they just NPCs who use the exact same armor and moveset? We'll never know, and they don't have any lines, unlike the Peacekeeper. After that, our duo encounter the man who seems to be the leader of these deserters, as he's shown to give orders. If the exchange between the Warden and Stone was bad before, then this was written by a chihuahua with a chunk of its brain missing. None of this exchange makes sense. Not a single part of it. The Warden states that all legions share the same oaths, implying that these Iron Legion members have forsaken theirs.
They were members of the Iron Legion. All legions share the same oaths. What had happened here?
As an aside, if all legions share the same oaths, what makes them different from each other? Did nobody proofread this? The Warden asks their leader why they've abandoned their posts. A fairly reasonable question, one that I'd also love to get the answer to.
Why have you abandoned your posts?
Instead of answering that question, the commander instead replies with a threat, saying,
A Blackstone dog has strayed from his pack.
"This man can't count. A is a word for a singular entity, and there are two of the plural variety in front of you." He brandishes his flail, and the Warden tells him to stand down, reiterating his point that their people need them. Seems logical.
Stand down! Your people need you.
Instead of responding to that point, he instead questions what a Warden is doing fighting for Apollyon.
What's a warden doing fighting for Apollyon?
That neither answers the Warden's question nor relates to the point presented, and is unbelievably disjointed. Who wrote this? The Warden says nothing, staring gormlessly ahead like his brain's been beamed out of his head by aliens. Stone now seems to be having an identity crisis, as he brandishes his flail, threatening the commander. The Warden's brain seems to finally have rebooted, and he questions for a third time why these soldiers have deserted. Instead of developing this plot line or giving us any clarification or answers, the commander simply tells his lackeys to kill the pair. Who paid someone to write this? Oh, but it doesn't end here, everyone. After killing several captains and the commander, we get a truly horrific scene. There isn't enough bleach in the world to wash this out of my eyes. Let's take this play by play. Iron Legion reinforcements arrive, charging in full sprint towards the Warden and Stone, letting out war cries. This is it. Stone and the Warden will surely be killed by these overwhelming numbers, will they not? A lone arrow strikes Stone in the chest, from an archer that is never seen and never looses another arrow. Stone didn't even block it. You have a shield, dude. That is its primary purpose. Keep it in front of your body. Do these troops rush the Warden now that it's just him? No. Instead, they stop their full charge and shut up to stare at him, as apparently running fried their Windows 95 brains. One of these soldiers is also a Warden again, and are these guys Wardens or not? Somebody please answer this. But then, taking a leaf out of Arya Stark's book, Apollyon appears from nowhere behind the Iron Legion troops, and her sword just lightsabers its way through the armor of a captain. All the way through the breastplate, the chainmail underneath, his entire torso, the chainmail on his back, and the backplate. All of it. And we're just getting started. How none of these guys saw her or heard her stumps me, but they just watch her kill their friend and throw his body aside, not hitting her while she's vulnerable. She even had time to move past all of the grunts to get to this guy. A second captain then decides to massively telegraph an overhead attack towards her, while everyone else steps away for some reason. Not even the Warden is doing anything. I guess anyone out of frame just doesn't exist. Apollyon slams the pommel of her sword into his face, which is protected by a faceplate, and thus he shouldn't reel like he does, and now the Warden that isn't a Warden decides to do something. He and Apollyon swing their swords like baseball bats at each other, and for some reason he stumbles back into not existing for a second, while she's fine. Apollyon then lightsaber slashes the first captain to death, and the fake Warden just rushes towards her with his face. Somehow the crossguard of Apollyon's sword breaks through this not Warden's chainmail and goes straight into his neck. This is impossible. Even if it were possible, opening someone's neck isn't instantly fatal. It's a nasty can of worms and a terrible way to go. He wouldn't just die on the spot instantly like he does. Now all that's left are the grunts that have stood by and done nothing while this woman has slaughtered everyone else. One clumsily thrusts his sword at her, and we can clearly see another guy off to the side not doing anything. You know who else isn't doing anything? The Warden. Where are you, dude? Step in and fight somebody. Apollyon grabs the grunt's sword and kicks him away, disarming him. This, at least, isn't egregious, as you can grab a static blade, especially if you're wearing hand protection. Then the gruntling that was standing by hits Apollyon across the back, and blood spurts out of her. A clumsy slash like that won't do anything against plate mail. Then again, looking at all the rust on Apollon's armor, I'm surprised it hasn't fallen apart. We can even see a fake warden in the background who has materialized from thin air, as he wasn't present in the previous shots. Apollyon then sweeps the offending grunt's legs out from beneath him with one hand, and lightsabers the sword she took from the first grunt through his stomach. That's a slow way to go and monstrously painful. But this guy just dies instantly. The magically appearing fake warden then has a colossally telegraphed swing at Apollyon, which completely misses. This wasn't even close. Look at where he struck. Apollyon hasn't even moved yet. Yes, her back has moved slightly, but her feet are still in the same spot. She hasn't changed her position, and this guy still missed. Apollyon then concusses him with a pommel bash to the side of his head, which shouldn't have rendered him as stunned as he is, considering he has a helm, and then lightsabers his head clean off. Threw the mail around his neck and all. End my suffering. Now the multiplying mass of grunts steps back, intimidated by Apollyon, and now a peacekeeper and a conqueror have been conjured by the Nothing to be put here. They interestingly have the Roman numerals 1 and 2 on their backs, and for a moment I thought they might be the lieutenants of the late commander here, but both fake wardens and the lone peacekeeper earlier also had the 1 numeral on their armor, so that can't be the case. Now Blackstone reinforcements arrive from thin air, preventing this ever-growing force of Iron Legion troops from escaping Apollyon, who then moves to confront the Peacekeeper and the Conqueror while the Blackstone grunts fight the Iron Legion grunts. And the Peacekeeper has a swing at Apollyon so telegraphed my ancestors could see it, and she doesn't even keep her offhand dagger in a position to guard against a possible counterattack. She then thrusts with said dagger, but it never would have reached Apollyon, as she's too far away. The Conqueror then decides to finally do something, but he massively overswings and Apollyon dodges his strike. I'll give credit where it's due. This wasn't a bad spin from Apollyon. Normally you don't want to spin while fighting someone, as it gives them the perfect opportunity to attack your exposed back, but in a specific instance like this, then it did serve to get her out of the way of the strike and set up one of her own. Spinning in unarmed combat can be somewhat more forgiving, as you can use it to bait an attacker while you deliver a spinning kick or hand technique, but in armed combat, it's not so advisable. This Conqueror actually uses his shield, unlike Stone, blocking Apollon's follow-up strike, and his Peacekeeper friend just steps back to leave him to his fate. Where is that archer? Did he only have 1 arrow? As the Conqueror stumbles, the Warden finally decides to step in, his crab brain having discovered that he has the capacity to do more than just drool at a wall. Unfortunately, he also doesn't know how to use a sword, as his absurdly long wind-up gives the Conqueror adequate time to recover and block. The Warden then backpedals away from the Conqueror, who could easily have hit him if he just extended his arm a bit. Warden, you have armor. That flail isn't going to do enough damage in 1 hit to end you, and this Conqueror isn't even covering his body with his shield. Half sword your blade and get in close. Do something other than just back away like a coward. We then shift over to Apollyon fighting the Peacekeeper, who blocks her strike with both of her weapons. Normally I'd be annoyed at using both of her weapons to block an opponent's single weapon, but she is using the dagger to support the sword, giving her added leverage. She then uses this leverage to catch Apollon's blade in her guard and shift her weapon aside, then lightsabers her dagger straight through Apollon's side. If we pause at the right time, we can see that this goes all the way through her torso. So passes Apollyon. You had a short and janky run, but sadly, your story has come to an end. No, not really. What? Apollyon is just immune to death, it seems, as she then grabs the Peacekeeper by the shoulder, who just stands there and lets this happen, and strikes her with the pommel of her sword. For some reason, blood shoots out of the Peacekeeper's face, even though it was protected. Nonsensical. The Peacekeeper has just given up on life, it seems, as she now just stands there and waits for Apollyon to decapitate her. Wow. But we're not done yet, folks. The Warden throws a weak attack that my grandmother could have blocked, which the Conqueror does, then evades a stroke from his enemy's flail, not mounting any sort of counterattack. The Conqueror then does a spinning shield bash, and the Warden flops to the ground like his bones have been stolen by a shaman main. Then, instead of hitting the Warden, the Conqueror just stands there twirling his flail until Apollyon lightsabers it off. He even looks up at it comically as it rockets off into the sky, His head then leaves his neck as Apollyon executes him. Ugh. Just ugh. The Warden is then helped to his feet by Apollyon after she just rips the dagger out of her side. Who needs vital organs, am I right? Lungs, intestines, a liver? Nah, they're just slowing you down. More Blackstones and Cross arrive via a side path that was never used before, and the Iron Legion members surrender. Apollyon then motions for her people to put away their weapons for some reason. That is incredibly contradictory to her philosophy, which will be revealed later. Then a captain and a grunt produce daggers from nowhere and rush Apollyon and one of her captains. This was in full view of the other Blackstones, who would have been able to see them drawing these daggers, and yet nobody did anything. The offending members are then held at sword point, while Apollyon lightsabers the head off of 2 fake wardens who have just appeared from nowhere. She then orders that the soldiers who didn't attack her be killed, and tells the 2 that just tried to murder her that they're now part of the Blackstone Legion.
Welcome to the Blackstone Legion.
The Warden moves forward like he's going to attack her, but Cross stops him by grabbing his arm. So much for standing up for virtue, I suppose. Let's examine this. Apollyon, you just took in 2 soldiers that wanted to kill you before, but now you've murdered their friends and comrades right in front of them. They're going to betray you at the first opportunity. Who was the writer here and why were they paid? Some people might say I'm being too critical or nitpicking. These are not nitpicks. This narrative has more holes than substance, and that's not even counting the nightmare-inducing choreography. And we're only 3 levels in. Please send help.
I need some doggone help!
This pain parade keeps on marching into the 4th level, Valkenheim in winter. In the first 2 sentences, we've already encountered problems. Cross narrates,
The snow is already falling on Valkenheim. But we went anyway.
do you understand that harsh winters make it incredibly difficult to keep your army supplied, right? Both Napoleon's forces and Germany's forces met catastrophic failure when they tried to invade Russia in the winter, and yet here we are. The Blackstone Legion really doesn't seem to have any sort of tacticians behind them, do they? As the forward scouts of the Legion move through Viking territory, Cross says something absolutely bizarre.
Ambushed. Exactly what we have been hoping for.
Why do you want to be ambushed, you insane troglodyte? You'd only want that if you're luring an opposing force into a trap, which you clearly aren't doing. Do you just want to die? Because that's how you do it. There really isn't too much narratively in the first 2/3 of this mission, just killing enemies as Cross and disabling catapults, which seem to be magic as they're launching bolts of fire. Remember what I said earlier about some minion killing animations taking too long? Well, Lawbringer was one of those. You stab one at a time at a painfully slow rate, and if you're lucky, you'll hit a second while doing it. This was one change I'm glad Ubisoft made. There is a strange moment of Cross being sent flying by a raider named Thornfinn in a bafflingly nonsensical manner, but at least it's just a short cutscene, unlike what we were subjected to in the previous level. The game glitched hard for me here, and I found it impossible to move except by rolling for several seconds. Not sure what that was about. After this section, though, is where all comes crashing down again. The Blackstones are assaulting a Viking fortress that lies across a chasm, and there is no explanation for the contraptions the knights are using here other than magic. They have these preposterous machines that launch a bridge across the ravine, which then somehow sticks to the walls on the other side. Straight up magic. One of these contraptions even malfunctions if you try and use it, oddly enough. As Cross advances, he states,
Vikings had numbers. We had technology.
No, you had magic. The final objective of this level is to open the gate once you cross this bridge of sorcery, and doing so triggers the final cutscene, where Apollyon slow charges across the drawbridge alongside an unnamed conqueror, peacekeeper, and lawbringer. Cross, you've been replaced, my dude. These 3 are never identified, and it's odd that they aren't Mercy, who will play as in the next level, Stone, or the Warden. Seriously, who are these 3? Everyone else is just a sea of grunts. Where's the Warden? He disappeared after the first section. Stating that they couldn't leave a force behind to guard the prisoners, the Blackstones then decide to behead them one at a time. Slowly. For some reason. Why don't you just kill them all like you did the Iron Legion troops in the last level? This will take forever. Cross is seen decapitating a raider, and I have to question why his hand is so close to the head of his poleaxe. Normally, you'd want to slide your hand down to gain power, but then I've just split wood, not necks. Maybe I'm just the insane one here. As the aforementioned unnamed conqueror brings forth an unknown raider, he can't seem to make the man kneel, who laughs in his face. Mercy then hits the raider on the back of the leg with her arming sword in a Mordhau grip, which I question the effectiveness of in one hand, but Apollyon stops Cross from killing him. Cross states,
Master, this beast killed at least 40 soldiers, including Davis.
The problems with this are 1. We never encountered this raider in the level, so he has no relevance to what we just did. We didn't fight him, we didn't see him in a cutscene. He's only brought up now, making this seem contrived. Secondly, not Davis, why? You were so young! No, seriously, who is Davis and why should we care? Apollyon then spouts some tripe about determining predator from prey by seeing them in war. She then lets this raider, who won't be named until the Viking campaign, leave. Why in the belligerent Blue Beetles would you do that? These people murder yours and pillage your lands for fun. You don't let them leave, you kill every last one. It's not like he was about to accept his execution just like the Iron Legion members you murdered were about to do, oh no. Cross then states that he thought Apollyon's laws of selection only applied to the knights, and then the level just ends. Fade to black. Abruptly. No more talking. This is pain. We now play as Mercy. Thankfully, there isn't much narratively to this level, aside from the Peacekeeper clearing a path for the Legion. I can't stress the air quotes any harder on that part. After a long and grindy slog to the Viking outpost where nothing of note happens, Mercy jams some ballista bolts into a Viking elevator machine of some sort, and once the Vikings try to activate it, the machine tears their outpost apart. Congratulations! The wreckage of this place is now blocking the path more effectively than the Vikings could have hoped for, and the Legion will need to spend hours, possibly longer, clearing it. This machine is also straight up magic. What are these chains and gears? What is any of this? Mercy then reports back to Apollyon, and the Warden praises her, to which Holden tells him not to encourage her. This at least gives us a tiny bit of characterization on the two, as it seems that Mercy either has an ego or likes to brag. We also see that Stone has recovered from that arrow that went straight through his heart, as well as Apollyon still being of the not dead variety. Man, Knight Medical Care must be out of this world if those two aren't dead. Maybe the Warden joined for the benefits package. Apollyon doesn't even acknowledge Mercy, she just stares into the distance like she has a cheese wheel for a brain. Okay, we're in the home stretch of the Knights campaign. Wolves among sheep. We begin with the Warden questioning Apollyon why they're attacking a fortress used as a storehouse. Well, doofus, if your enemy has no supplies, then they can't attack you very well, now can they? Use your head for something other than holding up your helm. Apollyon then blurts out more of her attempted philosophy, but this was clearly written by an edgy middle schooler. She gives some rubbish about the Vikings stabbing each other with their knives in the night and setting them free. Whoever wrote this should be forced to listen to Smashing Pumpkins for a week. Now the Warden has to escort this massive battering ram to the gates, and by the holy hand grenade, this thing is slow. It's also impossibly huge, taking 24 men to push it. Where did they get this thing, and how did they push it across all of Valkenheim? That would take forever, and the Vikings would have been able to muster an army to kill them all with this thing slowly trundles across the snow. Not even Grond was this monstrous. Also, you need to stay right by the ram, or it either won't move, or will move even more slowly. See all that fighting out there, little Jimmy? Well, too bad. You have to stay here and babysit the ram. When you finally get to the gate, one random ballista bolt flies from nowhere and sticks into the top of the ram, disabling it. How? You're telling me you took the time to make this monstrosity, and that's all it takes to stop it? The Warden climbs up and removes the bolt, and the Viking commander, Gudmundur, leaps off the walls to fight the Warden in a duel. Let me reiterate, he jumps off the wall, leaving the fortifications, with no way back in, to fight the Warden. Way to go. Even if you had won, you'd be killed by the Blackstones, who have placed all their eggs in one basket with this ram, as they have no ladders or siege towers to scale the walls with, or digging tools to undermine the walls with. You're dead no matter what. After a short sequence, the ram strikes the gate, breaking it open, and the Warden falls off the ram and just loses consciousness for a minute. There's no reason for this, but then that would require some writing skill, of which there was none to be found at Ubisoft. Gudmundur has just vanished into thin air, and Apollyon helps the Warden to his feet. Weren't you all about wolves and some such, Apollyon? Why are you helping someone who can't even stop himself from going Betty-bye in the middle of a fight? The Warden then questions why sacking a fortress this time bothers him.
We were in. That spelled doom for the Vikings. Wasn't that why we came in the first place? It was hardly my first time sacking a fortress. Why did it bother me?
Well, it shouldn't. These people want to do terrible things to yours for fun, so you should be wanting to kill them all. They're evil. You put your sword in them. That's how this works. We then have to fight Gudmundur again, who makes use of trained wolves. These things are a nuisance, and to whoever implemented them, I hope that every time you have to take a sticker off something, you just peel off the outer layer of it. Gudmundur then flees like a wuss, and the Warden just stands there and lets him do it. Why can the protagonist not seem to have a functioning brain in these cutscenes? After a short jog up the hill, you catch up to him, and the Viking storehouse is in flames, with Gudmundur staring hopelessly at it. The Warden then thinks to himself that he is on the wrong side. No, you are not, you unwashed camel. Vikings in this setting raid your people for fun. They kill your people, take your resources and valuables, and do other things that I can't say on this platform. They are evil. The Warden then slides Gudmundur his sword, and the two fight to the death, which the Warden wins. Gudmundur actually says, "To hell with you," note the one L. That's actually a detail they got right, a truly scant thing here. The Warden then confronts Mercy, who then says that the Vikings will starve without this storehouse. Good. They're the attacking faction. This is sweet karma. The Warden can't seem to comprehend this concept, though, and throws away his Blackstone pendant. Warden, there can be peace when the Vikings are all dead.
An oath. To fight for peace. So did you. All of you.
Cross then confronts Apollyon on why they aren't burning all of the Vikings' harvest, and Apollyon explains that if they leave enough for 2 or 3 clans, then all of the clans will fight each other for it. This is an interesting point, but it also leaves the possibility of the Vikings using the seeds of these plants to sow new harvests in the future, so I'd still advocate for destroying all of it, except that which you're going to take for yourselves. She then opens her mouth again and vomits up her pseudo-philosophy, and I'm starting to hear white noise every time she speaks. This level of character writing wouldn't pass a high school level class. Cross then discovers the Warden's discarded pendant, along with Stone, and Mercy has somehow teleported to join them. That's it of the Knights campaign. Wow, that was suffering. Now some people might say that the story doesn't need to be good. It's just a tutorial. No, if you're going to have a story, I'm going to judge it based on its merits. Either have a good campaign, or don't have one at all. So, a few more odd points to be addressed. Why didn't the Vikings have more defenders at this fortress? It was clearly established in the last 2 levels that they knew the Blackstones were coming, and yet they did nothing. I salute your stupidity, Vikings. For being apathetic to this approaching threat, you got what you deserved. Why did the Iron Legion, or at least some of it, desert their people? Was it because they didn't like Apollyon? That doesn't explain why they just abandoned their territory to the Vikings. And why did they set up within glancing distance of the Vikings who had taken their outpost and do nothing about it? We learned nothing about who the Warden is, or his backstory. We don't know why he was serving Domini, or what Domini did to upset Apollyon. The samurai weren't even mentioned here. Nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. This writing is a travesty. We didn't even get to play as my boy Conk. Now let me be clear. I'm only analyzing the narrative and choreography of For Honor. I haven't touched on the gameplay aspects, the good or the bad. These videos are only taking a look at the writing. There's fun to be had in the game, even though the writing is an abomination written by a glue-eating armadillo. Now for the scoring. In terms of objectivity, this gets a 3 out of 10. It does have some structure to it, but there's just so much nonsensical garbage here, from the inept choreography, to the atrocious dialogue, to the entire premise of Apollyon and the events of the plot. This campaign is the narrative equivalent of a gas station restroom. Subjectively, this isn't anything special. It's mostly just tutorial for the multiplayer, but hey, we actually have flails now. Nobody lets us use these things. It's a shame we never got to play as Conk, but at least these are in the game. For my own enjoyment, I'd give it a 5 out of 10. You're better off skipping this, unless you're looking to get a basic understanding of the game mechanics. Well, that was the first of 3 down. We still have the Vikings and the Samurai to go over. If you've made it this far, then I would like to give you a sincere thank you, and may you all have a weapon in each hand.